Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 5 C's of Service Catalog Management. My name is Julie Moore, and I'm the president of Mind the IT Gap. I'm excited to bring this topic. I was asked by the people there at Bright Talk to provide something a little bit different from the perspective of service catalog management. And I think the fit for this is a really good thing because service catalog, the process or, the creation of a catalog has a way of changing an IT organization permanently, meaning that prior to kind of developing this service orientation, we're kind of, a little distributed, not so focused in our efforts and not focused on the outcomes that we're providing to the business. And so along with any type of service catalog initiative comes a lot of different changes. And so what I wanted to do in this presentation was to kind of highlight some of the things that change along with the introduction of a service catalog, so that as you begin looking at implementing a service catalog or the process within your environment, you're also thinking about all of these additional things that have the potential to change, and if you do it right, you actually have the ability to capitalize on creating more change within your IT organization in addition to just bringing about a service catalog. So I'm happy to be here with all of you today. We're going to talk about, I've kind of jokingly called these the 5 C's, but it's really about understanding the customer in a much better and more tangible way. I think this is one of the most positive things that comes out of a service catalog, is we kind of go from, just thinking about maybe there's a customer on the outside of that service to really focusing in on, hey, we have a customer and we really need to build a very strong understanding of that customer. I think another thing is the communication that becomes more prevalent through the introduction of a service catalog. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Commitment is really important. And we're going to talk about how the catalog can help drive commitment across all your stakeholder groups. And then another aspect of the service catalog is that once we define what it is that we do as a service management organization, it's very important that this become a living and breathing document, that it evolves over a period of time to include more mature aspects of service management as those are developed, and at the same time has meaningful information that speaks to the different stakeholders. So it's very important that the catalog be integrated into change management. We're going to talk just briefly about that because this is more around the softer side of what happens with service catalog. But I nonetheless thought it was an important aspect of what drives cultural change. And then, of course, moving to a service-based culture, I think this is probably, in addition to knowing our customers better, one of the most important things that results from, creation of a service catalog. This is a position slide that I've created that kind of looks at, for those of you who are familiar with some of the intermediate classes, the class titled Service Offerings and Agreements is really centered around the definition of services and the way that services are identified, new opportunities within the strategy, and then where we begin to manage and establish expectations within design. And so know that the service catalog is, it's at the center of this diagram. It has a very important role in helping us to understand what investments are worth doing and making certain that we follow those investments and until they are, successfully designed. And in addition to that, working to find out what are the requirements that we need to hold ourselves accountable to meet the customer's expectations. So when I look at the way that the catalog fits, I know that the portfolio spans the life cycle, and I know that that's a great way for us to track these services. But the catalog for most organizations becomes what we want to focus on because of the fact that it really demonstrates everything that we're doing today for the customer. It has a very important position within the service lifecycle. So let's begin by talking about the customer part of this. I think one of the most important things that we need to understand is that we can use a catalog whether we're an internal service organization or an external facing organization. And when we begin looking at the service catalog, we have to be very careful to understand who our stakeholders are. A lot of times we begin from an IT perspective when we just go out and we start, all right, what services do you provide and what services do you provide? And we begin to capture information very much from a back-end perspective. When really the value of the service catalog is understanding how we meet our customers' needs. So the first thing that we have to understand is who are our stakeholders within the service catalog, the customers, the users, the suppliers, whatever they are. Again, this is going to depend upon your particular organization, what type of stakeholders your catalog is meant to, provide information to. But we predominantly have two sets of customers, internal or external. If you're an internal IT service provider, you're going to be serving the needs of the business units within your company. And therefore, you need to get to know those customers, what they're doing with these services, how they're integrating this within their business process. This is probably the most important information for us to gain in IT. We can go point to the server, and we know that that server is part of the service that we're providing. We've got that. That's what we intimately know. We've built these things for the business. But the part that is relevant to us is how does it meet the needs of the customer. So if we're using internal customers, that means we've got to go out, meet these customers, understand what their needs are. If they're external customers, it brings about a whole new set of requirements. Not only do we need to understand those customers, but we also have to understand what are the ideal types of offerings to those customers that would entice them to buy our services over many of our competitors. So the more intimate knowledge we have of those customers, the more likely we are to understand the value of the catalog, the services that are in there, and how it helps our organization to be more successful. And one of the things that we have to discover in that dialogue with the customers, what is the outcome that they want, right? What is it that they're trying to do with this service that we provide them? If we don't understand what they're trying to do, how can we possibly develop a service that meets their needs and their expectations? So we need to understand our customers, the outcomes, and we need to understand what defines value. One of my favorite stories to tell is for the longest time I've been very unhappy with my financial institution, mostly after the bailout. You kind of develop a little angst for having to bail out the financial institutions. And so I was determined that I was going to find a new bank. And I have certain criteria that I need to have in a banking service for it to be valuable. Since I'm a small company, I want everything up in the cloud. I want to have access to pay my bills, do payroll. These things are, very important to me. I can't remember the last time I actually physically went into a bank. So I'm into this virtual realm of financial institutions. So I could go outside the front door here in Davis, California, and walk around downtown, and there must be about 10 or 12 banks within a 3-block radius. If I walk through that front door to look at this service provider, I'm going to go in with this understanding of I have to have these online services. That's what's important to me. That's my reference value. If I don't have those things, I'm turning around and I'm walking right back out. Now, each one of those banks is going to give me pluses and minuses. Some will charge me for certain types of transactions. Others will give me free checking, but they may not have as robust of services as another one. And so ideally, when I choose the new financial institution in order to take my money and my business there, they're the ones that are going to give me my reference value. Again, I have to have that. But I also have to have the most significant positive value adds from that particular service. That's where I'm going to make my investment. And so if we as service providers don't understand what defines value for our customers, then it's going to be very difficult for us to understand what the positives and the negatives are to our customers, right? So understanding the customer, their outcome, and what is valuable to them is an incredibly important part of this journey as we go through the service catalog. Now, it lends itself to a really great question, which is, who is the customer? And I think in many cases, we spend a lot of time trying to figure out who the actual customer is, especially in very complex environments where you may have a centralized IT, some distributed IT, maybe a global footprint. because your customers could be other IT organizations that are using your centralized services to do something for their customers. Your customers, you could go directly to external customers, or you could be working directly with the business units. So it's important for us to understand who the consumers of the service are, who's paying for it, who's using it, in capturing the information around the service catalog, because what's relevant to each one of our stakeholders is really dependent upon how they use these services within their business processes. So we have to spend some time identifying all the different types of customers of services. The more that we push things up into the web, it seems like, we open ourselves up to even broader bases of customers, which makes it even more difficult to understand how these customers are using the services that we provide. So this is the picture. This one, again, comes out of the ITIL books. But it's really when we start beginning to build this picture of the customer, the connections that we're trying to make are how do the IT services integrate within the business processes that are then used for services that are fulfilling the needs of that business, right? So if I'm a healthcare company, if I'm providing electronic medical records system, that's built into the process of providing patient care, which, is an external service that I'm providing to patients. So I need to understand how all of this connects, because then I understand the criticality of the service that I'm providing, the way that it's being used, the importance to the business outcomes. It's tied to the vital business functions of the business. So the visibility that we gain from a clear and comprehensive understanding of our customer is incredibly important. I've been through a couple service catalog management initiatives with organizations where they spent most of their time capturing information around the back end. What are the services? What do we call them? Who owns them? What are the components? When if they had just taken a little bit of time to start from the opposite end, which is who is our customer, what are their business processes, and what services do we provide to them, we're essentially capturing the value proposition first, so that our discovery of the services and the related services, enhancing and enabling services, is driven from the importance of the customer, not because we believe that these services are important, but because we can see them tied to these business outcomes and what we're doing. And that type of driving the way that we gather data means that we're focusing our efforts on what's important to our customers versus what's easy for us to discover from within IT. So this is the linkage that's incredibly important as we begin to understand our customer. First, we need to identify who the customers are, the services that they're using, and the business processes that they're doing while they're using those services. This, to me, is the most important part of the initial service catalog record. Do I know who's using this? How they're using it is more important to me than all the information that I can tell you about the back end. Again, this is just another reflection of the service mapping, taking it to an even more depth level where then we begin, as we build more visibility, we can then connect it to the infrastructure, the data, the applications, hardware, software, SLAs, OLAs. All it does is it allows us to then go into our IT organization and begin to capture all those relationships. But the important part, notice at the top, the business service, the utility, the warranty, these are the things that we are being held accountable to our customers. And this should be where we begin our journey to understand the value of what a service catalog brings to an organization. And of course, we have the three parts: the pipeline that represents potential new opportunities, the catalog where we're capturing the things that we're working on or are currently delivering, and then retired services. But notice this bigger picture of what we're connecting this catalog to: our customers, right? The agreements that we have. This is the design, the strategy design view where we're making really good decisions about what services we offer to whom. And that's an important thing that as we begin building a service catalog, these relationships become much more visible, and we begin to understand that if a particular customer has an importance within the business unit, then it's our responsibility to make sure that their needs are being met. Right now, they are vital to the success of the business. That's where we focus our efforts. Instead of taking the IT view where we begin to capture information on the back end and then hope that at some point we get out to understanding how this all impacts our customer. Now, how do we use the catalog effectively? From my perspective, the biggest thing, you'll probably have heard this in any number of sessions today, but the catalog is kind of like a menu. You go into a restaurant, the whole point is you want dinner provided to you. If you don't have a menu, then, what are you going to do? I'd like something with mushrooms in it, right? I mean, it's going to be pretty awkward as the chef, has to come out and say, no, I don't have any mushrooms today. It is really a way for us to, if you are going and looking for a place to go out to dinner, the first thing that you think about is what type of food do I want and what restaurants are available that have that type of food. You are focused in on that service that's going to be provided to you. So the catalog very much is our definition of how we meet our customers' needs, how we uniquely do that in ways that our competitors don't. And so it's a very important part of that communication of what do we offer and how do we offer it in order to meet their needs. It's, how can you build a business? How can you build anything without understanding what the scope is? And that's what the service catalog represents, the scope of the IT organization. So we need to be able to confirm our stakeholders, understand their processes, tie that into their strategies. It's often very helpful to go out and shadow our customer. A lot of times as we go through the process of capturing data within a catalog, we kind of will ask customers questions. They'll push back a little. Oh, you guys are asking all this kind of stuff. Don't you know this already? It's very interesting how much they think we are aware of what they do and how those services are used when actually we don't have a tremendous amount of visibility into that. So it's often helpful to just go out and shadow your key customers as they go through their daily work. And you can ask them questions. Okay, what are you doing here and how are you using this system? And as you go through their workflow, you'll actually identify a lot more than if you sit down at a table and ask them a whole bunch of questions. And of course, surveys are a way for us to begin to, ask the right questions around how we can better develop services that meet those customers' needs. So the second part of this, right, understand our customer the best that we can. Then we need to effectively communicate what we do. And the service catalog, interestingly enough, because of its view of this menu, becomes a very important communication tool to our customers of the services that we provide. And in that, it begins to manage expectations with our customer where they have not been managed before. We may have service level agreements in place, or maybe even operational level agreements in place that are helping to manage those expectations. But this is the front of all that, right? The SLAs, the OLAs are things we're holding ourselves accountable in delivery of those services. We have to define the services that we provide. So it's a very important communication, not just out to our customers, but internally to us as well. Oh, that's this service, and it's supported by this service, and it's enhanced by this service. That understanding of services and the way that they interconnect throughout the organization is very important as a communication tool of what we provide, how we provide it, and again, being able to manage expectations effectively. So anytime we begin to think about communicating information to our customers, we begin to think about what's an appropriate communication strategy. One of the things that when we create a service catalog and we tell our customers, this is where we want you to go to find out what we provide, we have to make sure that we begin communicating information that's meaningful to those customers so that when they go out to look at a service catalog, they're likely to return. What types of information should we convey? How should it be structured, which is incredibly important because many times we develop these service catalogs that have a very IT-centric view. And unfortunately, our customers go there and they begin clicking on things and they kind of get lost in the mix and don't really understand what the value is of the customer-facing view of this information. What are the messages? What are we trying to convey? How do we want to deliver those messages? This is if we get our our customers to adopt using the service catalog as an initial point of entry into the IT organization, you know, we have the power to convey a lot of different information through that point of contact, not just what services and how to get a hold of them through, you know, some sort of an actionable connection to request fulfillment, but also we can present ourselves as a professional organization, put a face to IT of the people that are providing the services. You know, we can humanize the IT organization through a very well-developed communication experience tied in with the service catalog. So it's important for us to create something that's meaningful with the right information that helps to convey what's important as part of an overall communication strategy. You know, any company that does extremely well with marketing will always have a brand recognition that's beyond belief. I mean, of course, the first thing that always pops into my mind is Apple. You know, when you touch anything that's made by Apple, it just has that look and feel, that professional user interface. Even the packaging is Apple. And so when you interact with that company, every interaction point maintains that brand. And so if we are going to present ourselves to our customers in a way that's meaningful, that says we're a value service provider, that catalog is just one of many communication channels that should be in sync that present an image to the customers. So it's important for us to have the appropriate, information built into that catalog. So it starts by understanding, again, the stakeholders, what it is that we are trying to communicate to them, motivate, inspire, to create commitment, and then what channels will we use? And of course, this is one of the most predominant channels that we can produce from an IT organization's perspective that conveys that professional image. So it's an important part of communicating the vision of the IT organization in addition to, here's our menu. If I just use the menu as an analogy, you go into some restaurants and their presentation of the menu is incredible, right? It's everything, the ambiance when you come in, the music that's playing, the person that meets you at the door. They have that brand experience that gives you, in addition to great quality food, great service, whatever it is that the atmosphere that they're trying to build. And that's important that we use that menu as well to convey the type of service provider that we are and the way that we will provide those services. Another important communication tool is being driven through service level management, right? So we've told them, here are the services that we provide, but, we're holding ourselves accountable through SLAs and OLAs and the underpinning contracts with third-party providers to deliver that service at a level of quality that meets the business expectations. So part of the communication that comes through the catalog as we mature service level management is, okay, here's the level of performance of the service. Here are, the common metrics that we have. Here are the expectations that we've set with you. This is an important part of the communication, is that we are able to tell them that this is a quality service. And if it isn't a quality service, we better be working very hard to make sure that we turn that around, and especially if it's a customer-facing service. This is something they're using within their business process. If it's unreliable, it's obviously not supporting the outcomes that they're looking for. So monitoring service performance is an important part of our communication of our value. Using that to produce reports that will be used during service review meetings with our customers. But if we use this information appropriately, we should also be tying it to that service catalog so that as you come in and you want to use these services, you can see the level of expectations and begin managing them through that single point of contact versus, only being able to manage expectations during the service review meetings with the customer who's paying for the service. The end users are also, their expectations have to be managed as well. So these, the creation of the monitoring, the reporting, and the reviewing is an important part of communicating the value adds that we as a service provider can, provide to them through the services that are in the service catalog. And any time, of course, that we're not meeting the customer expectations, we should be working with them to negotiate, to figure out what we need to do to beef these services up. There's a certain level of accountability that once you put that on your menu, that you should be able to deliver it consistently, that the food, should taste the same night after night. It should come out around the same amount of time. Consistency is really what drives our customers to return. They like the experience. They like the value that they're getting. We need to make sure we're holding ourselves accountable both internally and to our customers for the delivery of those services. The next thing that we have to recognize is that commitment to change is important. I cannot tell you how many times I've worked with organizations who think the service catalog is a destination. It is clearly not a destination. It is a journey. When we begin going down the path of identifying services and customers and business processes, it's more than likely that our service management implementation is not very mature. If we don't have a scope for what we do, it's probably because we've been growing this in the closet or in the garage somewhere, and we're just now realizing we need to get a little bit more control in the environment. So we may have incident management, we may have problem management, maybe, some change, but we begin to recognize that unless we understand the totality of what we do, the scope is unmanageable because we don't have a defined scope. So we begin down this path of looking at the service catalog. Well, part of what happens is that everybody gets on board. Oh, yeah, we want to do the service catalog. This is great. And they think it's something that's a spot, a mark in time that at some point it will be finished. And the truth is, it's never finished. And we have to realize that we have to commit to this. This is a commitment to a change in the way that the service management organization works. We are now focused on the customer. We are focused on the outcome of delivering services and managing those services more successfully than we do today, focusing in on managing hardware and software and components. So as we begin to change the culture, it is just as important to get the commitment of all the key stakeholders that this is worth doing and that it's worth sustaining. Because I can tell you that as you begin capturing the 800 services and their definitions, that people become a little bored with, scraping up more layers and finding more stuff out there. And that at some point you begin to say, when will this end? And the truth is, it doesn't. The fact that we have that many services out there means that we haven't done a very good job of controlling it. So once we discover what's out there, that leads itself to consolidating, getting rid of a lot of these duplicated services. We can, clean up what we have out there, focus on delivering those that are critical to the business, working more successfully together as a group. But we have to realize that establishing that service management vision is a very important part of this journey, and getting people's commitment to the change of moving from the way that we do things today to a service-oriented way of working together is really important. So you have to develop a vision of what that future state looks like, and you have to be very careful not to set false expectations that we will be done with the service catalog. It's really not something that is done. It is something that lives, breathes, and continues to change as the business changes. So it will contract. It will get bigger at times. At times we won't be making any changes because of lack of funding or whatever. But it's something that will be a living and breathing entity that will need to be maintained because it's our scope, and our scope is going to change. So defining what the vision is of that future state, coming up with, why we're here, what we're trying to do is an important part of gaining people's commitment. It's, standard organizational change. If we can bring in the stakeholders, especially bringing in the customer, what's meaningful to them, thinking about the service providers who may or may not work well together, maybe we have some vendor relationships that aren't being managed well, all of these things come together when we begin looking at delivering services. And so if we can come up with a purpose, a common objective across all of our stakeholders, we're more likely to sustain a service catalog initiative and get commitment that this is the way that we should be doing things in the future. And part of that commitment is, if you look at a service level agreement, this is the typical stuff that goes in a service level agreement. And if you look at all of this and you think, you're looking at my own organization today and you're saying, okay, so we have disaster recovery, we have some change, but we haven't really formalized availability, so I don't know if we have availability or reliability targets. There's just so much goes into a service level agreement that we're holding ourselves accountable within a customer. You can see why a catalog is going to evolve. We may have customer information and contact information, the name of the service, and maybe some, targets that have just been randomly established as our beginning point. But to completely fill out a service level agreement or a service catalog record requires a level of maturity that most organizations don't have. And you may never get to a full, mature service level management or service catalog management process because the return on investment isn't there. You have enough management that meets the needs of your customers. So we kind of have to view this as an evolution of the information that we capture, track, and manage and maintain and connect both to service level management and to the service catalog record. And one of the things that I think we don't focus on enough as we go through a service catalog management implementation is that organizations are only capable of changing so much. You can't move from a maturity of 0 to a maturity of 5 in 6 weeks, right? There's a natural progression of introducing things into the environment that help to ratchet up the level of maturity. And this is a maturity model that I created for a completely different class, but I brought it in here because it's relevant in thinking about the catalog. The level of quality that's embedded, the way that we use knowledge, how we're focused on delivery, the tools that we use, are we reactive or proactive in the environment? How well do we manage our communications? And continuing on here, what is the change culture? Are we resistant to change? Are we stagnant? How well have we defined roles? How well do we manage costs? How well do we set our strategic goals and objectives? How well do we measure and manage? All of these factors are things that make an organization capable of change. And so if any one of these factors is at a low level of maturity, for us to successfully move forward with service catalog management, we have to get and change the culture so that we measure better, that we manage costs better, that we define roles and responsibilities better. So we can only move an organization so far with the initial stab at a service catalog. And far too often, you go after these initiatives and you think, we're going to create this service catalog, we're going to have all this information up there, when in reality, the amount that you can use and gather at the very beginning is going to be small. So if you set yourself up for failure, that's probably what's going to happen if you try to go overboard with service catalog. So we have to address the organizational change issues. How mature are we, and where are the weaknesses that have to be addressed before the organization can truly move to a service-based culture? All right, now the integration in with change management just makes common sense. Okay, so change management is all about controlling the environment. And one of the important things that we learn as we begin studying the service lifecycle is that in strategy, when we're making decisions about investments that we want to make, especially with new significant strategic objectives, one of the first things that we do after we create this business case is we submit a proposal to change management. Why to change management? You might be thinking, change is in transition. Isn't it a little soon to be thinking about getting change management involved? When the reality is, where do we understand the risk of everything that's changing right now? So if I now have this brand new initiative that's the hot thing that the business wants me to focus on, and I bring that into change management and I go, wow, so here are the last 3 hot things you guys wanted us to focus on. We're in the middle of still doing those. We have to understand the risk associated with everything that we're doing as an IT organization, because guess what? If we don't, we're likely not to be successful with a new strategic initiative because we don't have enough resources or capabilities, we're overextended, we don't have the funding, we don't have the tools. There's a lot of things that can go into bringing in additional risk. So tying this into change management makes sense. It makes sense for us to begin managing the risk. If we're going to approve this new opportunity, we need to have visibility in it as an IT organization and begin planning for when this new strategic initiative is going to be coming into the environment. So just like all changes have to be recorded, evaluated, and authorized, all changes to the services, the service offerings, and the service catalog, as well as portfolio, obviously, will come through change management and get that approval, that ability for us as an IT organization to go, okay, wow, they want to do this. Okay, let's look at the way that this new strategic initiative fits into what we're doing. Let's get our hand on it early as opposed to waiting and having it punted across the fence and scrambling around to figure out how to make things happen. So early notification is a good thing. So we want this tied back into change management as quickly as we can. And here's the view why, right? If we're creating strategic changes within the business, we know that that's going to lend itself to some sort of strategic change that will come through the portfolio and then, be something that we'll have to design, deliver, and support. So the earlier we know about these kinds of changes that are going on with the business, the more likely we are to be able to prepare that. In addition to that, we have changes coming in from suppliers and our relationship with those suppliers that also have to come in. So if our supplier and the business is changing at the same time, we would get visibility into that. So it's a very important part. You'll notice the scope really addresses services, and so it's important for us to connect what we're doing within the portfolio and catalog in with change management in order to give that proactive notification. And then, of course, once it gets to change management, it's going to go through the common, let's review this, let's assess it. You see the change proposal coming in here. It's just meant to be that let's really figure this out and understand how this is going to impact everything else that we're doing, prior to going forward with it with the business, because we can bring out some of the risk associated with these potential new strategic initiatives at a level that we may not have visibility in strategy or in design. The next one is culture. Organizational cultural change is something that's been studied and talked about, and, we have lots of great books that are written about organizational change. But the catalog fundamentally changes the culture of the IT organization. There is no doubt that before the catalog, we worked one way. Once we decided what our scope was, we begin to manage the environment differently. We begin to have visibility into things that we didn't see before. We begin building better relationships. It significantly changes the way that we work as an organization. Now, that's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's something that's gradually going to happen. So as you begin a service catalog initiative, it's incredibly important that you go back and begin looking at, okay, how is this going to change the culture? What do I need to do to bring these people along, along the path of becoming a service-based and service-focused culture? Very important for us to take that into consideration. Just like processes changed the way that we worked across these functional silos, now we have services that take these functional silos and these processes and begin to focus them on the totality of the value that we provide to the business. And that becomes an even more complex web of relationships that have to be managed. So the need for us to get people on board, help them to understand the importance of managing these services is incredibly important to our success. So we need to think about changing the culture, managing the emotional changes that occur, managing the transformation. Again, communication, one of the other C's is coming in here. And we have to remember that there are just going to be some people that will resist this. Oh, it's going to take too much time, too much money. It's not going to produce the value that we want. You're going to get that type of resistance. And it's important to be able to address these things, but to keep moving forward. And the best way to do that is to just plan for it. The other thing is, once we begin to change the environment, we need to then institutionalize that change, which is a little bit different, right? We need to put in training and awareness that goes long past the time that the change has occurred, measurement so we understand the effectiveness of it, developing clear processes and procedures so that we get consistent way in which we're managing the service catalog going forward, working with all of the different stakeholders. So institutionalize is then making it the way we do business, and that's also something that you should be considering as you go through your service catalog initiative. So those are the 5 C's, and I really, again, I have to state that when they came to me and they asked me to do something a little bit different here, I'm always one of those people who say, sure, I'll try something new. I actually was very excited about this because this is what I see. this is what I see organizations experience, that the catalog is not a destination, it is a journey. And along that journey, we are essentially changing the culture, we're building better commitment, we're transforming the way that we look at our customers and the way that we provide services to our customers. And so the service catalog is the beginning of that journey. So as you begin looking at your service catalog initiatives, please take into account that all of these other aspects of cultural change and communication in your customer are equally as important as producing the menu. And so that's just my point of view, and I hope you guys found this valuable. Let me go ahead and take a look at our questions here. Can you share the slides? Yes, I can, and I'll give you my contact information for that. Attachment with the presentation, will the presentation, okay. Will we be able to get a copy? So all 4 questions are all the same question. Absolutely, not a problem to get the presentation. I probably should have loaded it up ahead of time. But here's my contact information. You can connect with me, LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever you guys want to connect with. I've got something out there. And, to me, I do this stuff all the time, whether it's with Bright Talk or with other organizations. So it'd be great if, we connected and then, other stuff that I do, you maybe have an opportunity to visit and check out some of the other stuff that I'm doing that might be also relevant to help you guys in your path. Any other questions? I don't see any questions that came up other than the ones around the presentation. We have just a few minutes here. It'll come up and cut us off at 1:45 Pacific. But if you have any questions, sneak them in here real quick, or you can email me afterwards. No big deal. And please don't forget to do the ratings. I look at this feedback every time I do one of these presentations. It's important to me that you guys get something out of this. So if you didn't like something, let me know. If you liked it, great. I'll keep producing more stuff like this. So don't forget to do the ratings for me. All right. I don't know if I can actually load this up right now or not. You can edit up to 15 minutes prior to live and during the recording. It doesn't look like I can. Which of the 5 C's would you say is most important? Oh, without a doubt, the one that I started with. There is no substitute for getting to know your customer. And all too often, we leave that up to the customer-facing processes like, the service desk or incident management or something like that. And that's a great place for us to get to know the customers. But we're doing that on a transactional level, right? We're sitting down, we're answering the phone, and we're solving incidents. When the true value comes from understanding in totality. This is the reason why business relationship management was such a powerful addition to the 2011 books, because it said, look, we need a process that establishes a relationship with our customers at that strategic level so that we can begin, instead of retroactively now going back and asking the customers, hey, what do you use this for and why is it important? We should be defining that from the very beginning, and that should become part of the overall view of the services. Here's the opportunity. This is what they want to do. This is the value that it creates. This is the business process, so that as we go through strategy and design and transition and operation, we are always looking at this is what the objective is of what we're doing. And let's tie it back. Let's keep confirming that we're on track to deliver what that customer needs. So by far, knowing and understanding our customer is so much more important than the other C's. You can load the presentation attachment after the session is closed. Okay, I will do that. I will do that immediately afterwards. Thank you for letting me know that. Any other questions? We're under a minute here, folks, if you can type something in quickly. Well, before this webinar finishes, let me just say thank you so much for coming out today. I appreciate having having a topic that was fun to deliver, that wasn't as technical and geeky as they normally get. So this was kind of fun to kind of focus in a little bit on the softer side of what happens as we adopt the service management lifecycle. Again, thank you for being here. I will, as soon as this thing is over, upload the presentation. I'm assuming that you guys can get that up, get that afterwards, and that should take care of the rest of the questions that I have. Everybody have a wonderful afternoon. Hopefully it's as sunny where you live as it is where I am. It's shorts weather, and the top is off the Jeep, so I think I'm going to go home, and I hope you guys have a great afternoon. Take care, and I hope to see you again sometime soon here up in Bright Talk. Bye now.